तो आपने देखा अभिनंदन समारोह मीराबाई चानू का. She lifted a total of 202 kgs, which was 87 and 115 kgs in 49 kilogram category. And she is an inspiration for billions around the world for her hard work, grit, and I would say she has so much to learn from her, Mihir. And I would say now she has so many avenues wherein she can move and make India proud.
Yeah, so we were talking about her being an ambassador for the sport, and she has been. I do appreciate the Minister of Sports and Youth and also Information and Broadcasting, Anurag Thakur, taking the time to felicitate this special athlete. We're talking about her accomplishment here. Never in history has India been on the medal board on day one. We were there. We were in fact number 2 in the rankings for a while thanks to this feat. And we're talking about the silver medal now too. There is some testing going on for the gold medalist from China right now. So we don't yet want to, we don't know how that's going to go, but there is a chance that that silver might be converted to a gold. Let's wait and see. Gaurav, in this sport, with the intense competition and the need to perform, once in 4 years, there tends to be mental pressure on athletes to do what it takes, to reach the top sometimes.
Yes, and it's very unfortunate. Hopefully, the Chinese athlete is clear, and has not resorted to drugs. But the result will be out, I think, by the evening. But just going back to Mirabai again, and the ripple effect, we were talking about how athletes get inspired by success. And you are absolutely right. We talked about Karnam Malleshwari, who really set the trend.
Back in 2000.
And it's interesting how Mirabai herself was inspired by Malleshwari.
Karnam, yes.
And this is going to now trigger off many more young girls to take on weightlifting, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Success breeds success, as they say.
And he spoke about the mental pressure, and during the COVID time, Corona time, when you are home ridden within the 4 walls, how do you take care of your training, of your practice, mentally and both physically?
Very tough, and particularly under COVID, they had to convert their homes into gymnasiums, train indoors, and it's tough to keep your diet regimen going. Very strict to keep under that 48 kilograms. Because that's critical, and at the same time stay fit. Training 4-5 hours indoors, not easy, and it takes a lot of self-drive, a lot of dedication, and I think above all the willpower. But she's shown it all.
Yeah, the last time, if you remember, in the Olympics, we were talking about the success of Mirabai Chanu. Similar effort, but not able to complete her clean and jerk last time. So this time, her fate changing, and Mirabai Chanu has represented India well. She's getting rightly felicitated. Speaking of Indian athletes today, there is another boxer now who might get decorated. In fact, 2 women boxers who are in the fray. Lavlina Borgohain has now entered the quarterfinals. One more win for Lavlina, she will be on the podium. Remember, in boxing, both the losing semi-finalists get a bronze medal. Remember, Mary Kom is also in the quarterfinals, so potentially a medal there if we get a victory. And then just to talk about participation, India's Vishnu Saravanan has gained in his laser standard class in sailing. It's really nice to see Indian participation in sailing across different events, and not just participation, but moving ahead, right? Yesterday we saw a fencer who won a first round. That's never happened. And then little earlier, Rupinder Par Singh, Simranjit scoring for the Indian hockey team, trouncing Spain 3-0. They are set to qualify. But today also I want to acknowledge an athlete who might have his last Olympics here, 39-year-old Sharat Kamal. Now, the news is that he did lose to Ma Long. Ma Long, again, one of the greatest table tennis players, in fact, I would say of all time. He took a game out of Ma Long. For a while, it was 1-1. And in his swan song, I just want to call out what Sharat Kamal has done for the country.
Absolutely. I think it's an outstanding achievement. First time ever, in fact, both Manika and Sharat Kamal reaching the 3rd round of the Olympics. One couldn't have ever thought of that. In a sport that's been dominated completely by the Chinese. And Ma Long, as you rightly said, a legend. He's also probably in his last Olympics, known as the Dragon. And, he got a real fright from Sharat Kamal. Completely good tactics by the Indian, I must say. He went out all guns blazing. He realized that he couldn't play his standard game. He had to take the risks And that's what paid off for Sharat Kamal.
Absolutely.
And I was watching that match, one game all. Sharat Kamal was actually up 9-8 in the third. And you can imagine if he'd won that third game, things could have completely turned.
And he said, had it been any other opponent, he would have easily won against Malong. It was a tough one. And with this, we have ended that, we would say, the Indian table tennis contingent camping here in the Olympics, Tokyo Olympics 2020. So what's on the cards next, Mihir?
Yeah, why don't we take a look at some gymnastics? Remember, this is such an important sport for the Olympic Games. There is a team competition and there's a men's and women's individual competition. We are going to give you some gymnastics action on the other side of this break.
still higher, but laid off that time. That is popped up. After the shortstop's falling, moving over to the middle of the field. Catch.
And welcome back as we close day 4 of the Tokyo Olympics. So much action going on. The last sport that we were just watching has been a staple of the Olympic Games and one of the star attractions in terms of the sports that you can watch, artistic gymnastics. And what we just saw there is an upset. The 11-year reign of the United States of America in gymnastics was ended by the ROC team. ROC, for those who might be joining the Olympics recently, is actually the Russian Olympic Committee team. So formerly the Russian team is now number 1, upsetting the US team and Great Britain in bronze medal place for the first time since 1928. In the studio I have with me Mr. Gaurav Sheth. Gaurav, you've been a veteran literally of the Olympics. You have followed the sports well, shared your comments and analysis for many different Olympics. What, 7 of them in a row? 7 or 8?
This was the 9th one.
The 9th one. So we're really privileged to have you here, Gaurav, as we do a wrap for today. But your thoughts a bit on what we saw in gymnastics and the US domination. You know, the last 3 Olympics has now been appended, and the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Simone Biles, had to pull out of the competition after the first event.
Yes, lots of upsets, and just on that specific event again, we saw the mighty US going down, and also the Chinese, who were fast emerging. We saw that unfortunate fall in the uneven bars there for the Chinese girl, and that one mistake unfortunately cost their team a medal. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, isn't it?
You know, it is. And you talk about that point, and for the men's team competition on the other side, the gold also went to the Russians, the formerly known as the Russians, I should say, the ROC team. And it came down to the very last routine, and the difference there was just 0.103 points. So in this case, the Russian Olympic Committee has emerged on top on both ends of the team competition, and I think well deserved. I think those athletes put in the effort. This, as you know, Gaurav, is a sport of tremendous precision.
In talking about upsets, we have to talk about tennis, and the top 2 seeds, the women out, Osaka losing today, and another big upset to Vondrousova, and this is after the top seed, the Aussie, lost in the first round itself.
Indeed.
So very unpredictable these Olympics are turning out to be.
Yeah, and you know, quite one-sided losses for both the top 2 seeds on the women's side. Completely inexplicable, I feel, to analysts of the sport. So this was Czech left-hander Markéta Vondrousova, a seasoned player, but not a lot of people have heard about her. She won 6-1, 6-4 against the local favorite. Now, Naomi Osaka practices in the US, but she's representing Japan for these Olympics. And a lot of hopes were riding with her. In fact, she lit the Olympic torch, unfortunately not able to go further. And 2 days ago, Ash Barty, world number 1, and also a sharpshooter in tennis, Wimbledon champion, ousted in the first round by an unheralded Spanish player in tennis too. So a lot of upsets. And Gaurav, let's talk about another racket sport, though a smaller racket. Achanta Sharat Kamal goes down to legendary Ma Long, but not before a fight today.
Absolutely. Full credit to Sharat Kamal, and this is probably his last Olympics, 39-year-old. But my word, he certainly made all of us proud. First of all, a big achievement, remember, at the Olympics, to reach the 3rd round is an achievement in itself, both for him and Manika Batra. And of course, up against Ma Long, the legendary Ma Long, the defending champion from the Rio Games. And what a fight he put up. 1 game all. He won that 2nd game, and you could see the tension for a change. Ma Long normally coasts in his matches. In fact, he's famously has said before the games that even if he loses 1 game, he'll be letting his country down. That is the dedication of Ma Long. And here was Achanta Sharat Kamal, who took that 2nd game off the Chinese champion. He was leading 9-8 in the 3rd game. And that's where Ma Long just upped his game, as champions do. And then, but full marks to Achanta.
Yeah, you know, last night I'd written in one of my posts that it would be a very long shot for Achanta Sharat Kamal, but for a while it didn't look like that. Okay, a lot more updates to give you, a lot more on India action and global action, but on the other side of the break, stay with us. Okay. And we are back with continued coverage of the Olympics. We were talking about Ma Long, the legendary table tennis player who took down India's legendary table tennis player Sharat Kamal in a harder fought battle than most people thought. But let's talk about some other battles that took place today, especially for the Indian contingent. Now, what could be the team that most people will be following with a lot of pride and that has a lot of history? In the past, 8 gold medals have gone to the hockey team of India. Indian men were playing today. They were playing Spain, and a thumping this time, but different from the last time, 3-0 in favor of the Indian hockey stick wielders. Gaurav, you said that you strongly see a medal prospect here in this sport, despite the fact that that hasn't happened since, what, 1980,
Yes.
right, for Indian hockey. Why now?
I think very simple. All of India was in doom and gloom 2 days back with that 1-7 loss to Australia. People thought that that's it, you know, it's all over for India. But my word, they've really come back with a bang. They took that rest day, they put that defeat behind them, and you know, like all good teams, they really came back against a very strong Spain today. 3-0, but the way they won that match, Mihir, was very, very convincing. Converted all the penalty corners. Rupinder Pal Singh, of course, very, very strong with those 2 goals that he scored. But even on the field, they had most of the possession, attacking all the time. And it didn't seem like a team that had lost 1-7 just 2 days back.
Yeah, remember that they lost 7-1 against a resurgent and a hungry team from Australia. Australia considered one of the strongest hockey teams, though not number 1 in the world right now. They are behind Belgium, but many regard them as one of the greatest hockey teams. They lost out in the last Olympics and they came back with a vengeance this time. But remember, 4 teams qualify from the group, so that is good news for the Indians. Rupinder Pal Singh shot in the 15th minute. He shot again in the 54th minute, and Simranjeet Singh had a scorcher in the 14th minute. So
interesting also, Mihir, that 4 teams qualify out of the 6. So that's important because it's not just qualifying. India has qualified for the quarterfinals. I don't think that's a big deal. But what is a big deal is if India can finish in the top 2, ideally just behind Australia. And I'm very optimistic that should happen. 2 matches to go, against one against Argentina, of course. Argentina is ranked lower than us currently. And then Japan, again a team which is ranked lower. So there's no reason. The momentum now back with India. And there's no reason why we should not win both those matches and finish second. And what that does is gives us an easier draw in the quarterfinals. Because if we finish second in our group, we will play the 3rd place team in the second group, which is much better than playing the top 2 teams of the other group.
right, and those top 2 teams would be the Netherlands most
And probably
likely,
Belgium.
and Belgium. Now Germany also a strong contender there on the other side. But playing a devil's advocate a little bit here, Argentina and Japan, right? We talk about these 2 teams. Argentina, reigning Olympic champions. Now they weren't expected to go all the way last time, but they did that. So they have that experience and they really want to keep that momentum going. So let's not overlook Argentina. That's a tough team. I think even though we're ranked higher, many pundits would give Argentina the edge given their momentum in the Olympics. And for Japan, Let's talk about Japan. You cannot take the hosts lightly here. Guess who is atop the global medals table, not just at the end of day 3, but at the end of day 4. It's the Japanese, above the United States, above the ROC contingent, and above People's Republic of China. They have hometown momentum, and it's just amazing how the athletes have done it. It's not going to be an easy game against the hosts.
Absolutely, Mir. And I think the other thing worth keeping in mind is that it's a must-win game for both Argentina and Japan now. Both are at the bottom of the table. So to qualify into the top 4, they would have to try to beat India. And so the stakes are much higher for them. Also remember, in that opening match, Japan versus Australia, Japan at one stage were 2-0 up against Australia.
Yeah.
So they're not to be taken lightly. None of these teams can be taken lightly. But I think just seeing the form, the way India has come back, the momentum is with them, they are resurgent. I'm certainly optimistic that we should finish second in this group.
Yeah, I hope so, and that matters again for the seeding also, and let's make sure that we continue to back the hockey team. Now, success on the hockey field has not been replicated with success in another field that we really were hoping for some medals by now, and I'm talking about shooting. Today I thought, Gaurav, that we had one of our best medal prospects, 19-year-olds, a pair of them, Manu Bhaker and also Saurabh Chaudhary, who were going in the mixed team event. They qualified first in their first round, but a disappointing 7th in the round that matters, the medal round. And unfortunately, it's been 4 straight days of disappointment in the shooting range, and that after an investment of sending all these athletes to train in the best possible facilities. Gaurav, in your opinion, is this a matter of just luck, or is there something that perhaps you would have seen in a skill set that perhaps didn't go through as planned?
I think specifically in Manu Bhaker's case, it certainly comes down to a lot of bad luck. In the individual event 2 days back, she had a malfunction in her weapon, which is a rare, they're saying it's a 1 in a million instance of that happening. Despite that, she came back, but had a bad final shot and couldn't qualify for that final. But I think that setback mentally was playing on her mind. Even today, Saurabh shot very well in that second round, but unfortunately Manu disappointed there. And I think somewhere it's a combination of luck, and that then shatters your self-confidence. And I think that's what happened.
Indeed. So there's luck and there's skill, and to talk about both, we will continue with more sports coverage, but on the other side, right now we're going to take a short break. Okay, and we continue with the coverage here of the Olympics. We talked about a little bit of an unfortunate situation with shooting this time around for the Indian athletes. But Gaurav, I have a story I do want to share. One of my favorite stories from the Olympics is in the Athens Olympics, there was a medalist who, a former gold medalist who had to make a last shot that he would make, I'd say 99 out of 100 times. And this male shooter missed his mark. He was so disappointed that he came back to a tent and was in solace and almost in tears, and met another young shooter who came up to him. I think it was from the Czech Republic at that time. And they had a conversation. Well, 4 years later, these two came back, but as husband and wife, and people say that this was the conversation that paired them up, and this time the wife then got the first gold medal of the next games. So you never know. Right now we have some very young mixed pairs here. I'm not saying anything about Manu Bhaker or Saurabh Chaudhary, but I'm just saying that sometimes there can be light at the end of the tunnel. So that's for shooting. Gaurav, let's talk about another sport today that we had a pair of hopefuls, and that is in badminton. So our pair today of Reddy and Shetty had their third game. They won but failed to qualify.
Yes, very, very unfortunate. If you remember, they had a great win, the Indians, over the world number 3 from Chinese Taipei in the opening round. Big upset. And I must remind you of the format in the men's doubles. 4 teams in each pool, and Indians were in Group A. And the top 2 qualify for the quarterfinals. So the Indians really set it up well. Then they lost their second match, and that was against the top-seeded Indonesians, Gideon and Sukamuljo, in straight sets. And today was their final game, a crucial must-win for the Indians, which they certainly delivered against Great Britain, Lane and Wendy, who they defeated in straight games. But lo and behold, and again, Mihir, this comes down to really bad luck, and of course, great play by the Chinese Taipei pair. Against all odds, they defeated the top seeds in their final pool match, 2-1. So the situation was that 3 pairs in our group all had 2 wins and 1 losses each. So they were equal in points. It came down to a countback of the number of games won and games lost. And that's where Indonesia finished on top of the table with 5 games won and 2 lost. The Chinese Taipei just snuck ahead of us with 5 wins and 3 losses. And finally, we were pipped to the post by them because we had 4 games and 3 losses. So very, very unfortunate. On the doorstep of creating history, because this would have been the first time in a doubles event at the Olympics in badminton that we would have made the quarterfinals.
Indeed, and watch out for these names going ahead. Satvik Sairaj Ranki Reddy, I know that it's a mouthful, but it will be a name that we will need to remember for the future, and Chirag Shetty. This is a young talent and a combination talent that will continue to do well in the future. They are ranked amongst the very world's best, but falling a little short, and today to 21-17, 21-19, and again the second game could have gone either way. Just I mean, it was still, I guess it could have been a larger margin too, but there is a lot of depth today, in world badminton.
Must tell you a quick story on Satvik and Chirag and how they got together. It was quite by chance, and in 2016 they were actually respectively, they are of course still very young, both are in their early 20s, and in 2016 the Indian coach, we had a Korean coach at that time, Tan, and he recommended that they should partner each other. This was way back in 2016, so 5 years back, and both of them protested, saying that we are very comfortable with our existing partners. And sure enough, as they started partnering each other, the first 3 tournaments they lost in the first round. So they said, well, they were telling the coach, we told you, you made a wrong decision. But he stuck to his guns, Stan. He said, look, I see that this combination is going to work. They also then stuck to it. They started understanding each other, because that's what doubles is all about, understanding and partnering and combining with your partner. And then they started progressing into finals. They started winning world championships. And here we are. They've got a very bright future. They've certainly got at least 2 Olympics ahead of them. So no need to despair, certainly, for this young pair.
Yeah, I just wish that that their names were a little easier. Chirag Shetty is not that hard to forget, but Satvik Sairaj Ranki Reddy is a mouthful, and I will continue to practice this if I do this going ahead. Well done, I should say, again on national TV to this pair. You have definitely kept your country proud, even though you didn't make it to the next stage. Okay, so a little more going on also for the Indian contingent. How about you talk about them boxers? Yeah, 2 boxers, women with prominence who can take us to a medal. 2 women who are just a round away from bringing laurel to the country. One is a seasoned veteran, Mary Kom. MC Mary Kom, she's famous. There's a Bollywood movie on her, and she's a medalist in the past. Let's talk about the other the quarterfinalists today. So Lavlina Borgohain is also in the quarterfinal of the 64 to 69 kg round. Gaurav, your thoughts on their prospects to win one more at least?
Very good prospects, and the way they've come into the quarterfinals, both of them. But let's talk about Lavlina, because she won her bout today very convincingly, and the 23-year-old from Guwahati. And a very interesting story again on how she got into boxing. She was actually into martial sport, Muay Thai, which is a Thai origin martial sport, inspired by her elder twin sisters, who were both kickboxers. And lo and behold, she was spotted, her talent, her agility, her fitness was spotted, and of course her aggression, because she was in martial sport, and her coach recommended, why don't you try boxing? And the rest is history. She's worked hard at it, bright future. Last World Championships 2019, she finished third, and there's no reason why she can't go all the way at these Olympics. Remember, just one more match for both Mary Kom as well as Borgohain to win, and they'll be assured of a medal.
Indeed. But is being assured of a medal good enough for MC Mary Kom? This might be her last Olympics, and I don't think she will be happy with anything but a gold medal. But let's keep our hopes and our support for these boxers more on the other side. There's so much sport to share, but please wait for a little bit. We'll be right back after these messages. And we continue with our coverage of the sports that have taken place over the past few days at the Olympics. Again, I have Gaurav Sheth with me. Gaurav, one more update though on the Indian side in sailing. Now, I know that these aren't podium finishes, but I think I want to acknowledge the athletes here. Netra Kumaran finishes in 38th place in race 6 of the women's one-person dinghy laser radial. Unfortunately, she failed to qualify. Vishnu Saravanan, although a little better, on 22nd place in race 5 of the men's one-person dinghy, and Ganpati Kelapanda finishes in 18th place in the men's skiff 49er race 1. I know these numbers don't sound high, but what is important in this sport and another sport like fencing is that this is unprecedented. Yesterday we had the first Indian fencer to win a round.
Yeah, again, it's inspiring for lots of youngsters to follow their footsteps. Who would have thought of an Indian woman taking fencing, and a very technical sport like fencing? And what are the odds of that happening? Especially where it's a sport that is literally foreign to India. Where is the infrastructure? Where is the training facilities? In fact, an interesting interview by her where she said she was training with bamboo sticks.
Yeah.
But that's the determination again. But what I'm saying is this is a path breaking into sports which are not heard of, because she will be a role model for lots of young girls to take on fencing.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why India can't do well in that sport.
Yeah. To me, I think winning a round for Bhumika Devi in fencing is like getting a medal. Now, there is no good reason though why we can't have this infrastructure in India. You know, I happened to take a fencing class. It was in college in the US, but I wish that there was more here, because you know, I think the sport goes well with our history, you know, sword fighting, and I think sword valor has been something that's been steeped in well with us, and it's also a sport with tremendous stamina, reflexes and agility. So I hope that what we've seen at this Olympics is the start for other are the young athletes, young aspirants to have another option for a sport. Now, let's talk about some of the new sports at the Olympics and how they have gone. Just a little earlier, we saw softball. And softball isn't a brand new Olympic sport, but it has been brought back. And here also, I think we saw an upset of tremendous proportion. This game is so popular in the United States. There are so many people who play softball in the United States. But somehow, the home team, Japan, caused an upset and won the gold again. They upset last time, they won the gold once again. You can see this emotion that was there in the Japanese players too.
Big upset, and the Japanese did so well there, holding their nerves literally in that final which we just saw. And talking about new sport, the other interesting one, of course, is skateboarding. Here. Again, where typically on the streets you see kids skateboarding, going up and down those railings. It's really a daredevil sport, but here it is in the Olympics, and guess who won the gold medal? A 13-year-old from Japan. You know, who could? What were we doing when we were 13, Meher?
Oh,
you know,
well, I
probably
was
doing homework and
yeah.
and
I mean,
studies,
I was
but
playing a little bit of tennis, you know, with the family playing sports. We had a little bit of a school schedule and go out, but
yeah,
I didn't ever dream that I would get a medal at that stage. But what's interesting, Gaurav, is that not only the gold medalist was a 13-year-old, but the silver medalist also from Brazil was a 13-year-old, and the bronze medalist was a whopping 16 years old. So in skateboarding, in the women's event, what has happened is that the average age of the athletes that were on the podium is 14.4 years, which is a world record for the lowest average age of any athletes on any podium. Japan's success on the women's side, or you know, I think I should say for the girls, because they were literally under 18 that won. And on the men's side also, a Japanese heralded hero came through. Hirogome Ito won this event for the men too, and these two gold medals have been critical in placing Japan at the top of the table with 10 gold medals. Gaurav, you've been at one of the Olympics yourself. Can you talk about some of the power that athletes from the home nation feel when they are at an event like this?
it is amazing. I was at the Sydney Olympics and superbly organized, and had the privilege of staying at the media village right next to the games village where all the athletes stay. The atmosphere is tough to describe, you know, and also the camaraderie. Fierce rivals on field, but in the evening you see the athletes bonding, mingling with each other, and it's like the world comes together as one. And I think that's the power of sport. It just unifies countries. We forget about, look at COVID, for example. It's day 5 of the Olympics. No one's talking about COVID. We've forgotten that this happened. And that's the power of sport.
Yeah, indeed. But on that note, there have been some notable impacts of COVID here, right? And the #1 golfer in the world, John Ram, had to withdraw, and as did another top-ranked golfer. There were some tennis players that had to withdraw, and that there have been consistently some cases of COVID-19. It's something that is ravaging the world. But as you said, you know, and as I felt strongly, that once the games would start, this would be a diversion away from COVID and something that the world can look forward to. It's also the first large global event since March of 2020. So I think COVID has made way for some outstanding performances that we have seen in the past. And let's talk about, as you said, in the Olympic village, there are athletes from different sports. Now, many people are taking selfies with Novak Djokovic, and people, you know, in certain sports have been heralded more, they've been looked at with more adulation. But what I also like about the Olympics, Gaurav, is that it's an equalizer. And there's no reason to celebrate a tennis player more than a discus thrower who has put in the same, if not more, time.
I mean, one of the great sights, in fact, at that time was to see Federer standing in the queue waiting for his dinner. And it is a great leveler. Also the amazing diversity, Mir. You see in the same breath, you see the 7-footer basketballers and the 4-footer weightlifters.
Yeah.
But all mingling together, they're all equal.
Yeah.
And you can have the big shot putters,
Yeah.
and then the lean fencers. So it's a real combination of diversity, but the common thing that binds all of them is the spirit to excel in sport, the spirit to do really their best.
Correct.
And that's what the Olympics is about.
Indeed, and on that diversity point, we saw that a 13-year-old had won the skateboarding event. On the other side, there was a 57-year-old Kuwaiti shooter who picked up a medal in the skeet shooting event, which was amazing. And while we have a 7-footer NBA player playing for France, actually, Rudy Gobert, on the other side, we also have our very own Mirabai Chanu, who is just a shade over 5 feet, actually, but lifting 202 kgs. Today, of course, she was felicitated in India by Anurag Thakur, the Youth and Sports Affairs Ministry in charge, as well as the person in charge of information broadcasting. And throughout what I've been observing is once she got that medal, what does she say and how does she say it? And so far, I'm really impressed with what she has to say and the humility with which she says it.
Yes, absolutely got her head on her shoulders. And despite this big achievement, she's not lost her humility, very, very grounded. And the good news, of course, for all of us is that this is not the end for her. She's very young, at least a couple of more Olympics, so a lot more. And not just that, she's going to inspire many youngsters now to take up weightlifting. And that's the beauty of success, isn't it, Mir? Success breeds success. And nothing like a role model.
No, it's really nice to hear that from you, Gaurav. You've been a true scholar of sports, and it's really nice to have you here today. So I'd love to continue talking to Gaurav, but we have to take a break, so we'll be here on the other side of the short break. And we promised more discussion on more sports on this side, and here we have it. Continuing with Gaurav. Gaurav, we've talked about some of the highlights of the day for Indians, for international athletes over the past couple of days. We also have some more coming up. So what we're going to see for the first time at the Olympics, at these Olympics, is Indian golfers. So we have Anirban Lahiri, we have Udyan Mane, and we have Aditi Ashok, who will be on display very soon. Please size up their chances and any interesting tidbits that you always have for these athletes.
No, I would say Anirban has gone into the Olympics in top form. He finished 5th recently at a PGA tournament in the US, just a week before he flew into Japan. So it couldn't be in better form. Of course, top competition at the Olympics. John Rahm, the top seed, as Mihir said, unfortunately contracted COVID for the second time in 6 weeks. So he's had to pull out. But the rest of the top players are all there. It's going to be very tough conditions. It's very, very windy for the last couple of days in Tokyo. There is almost a storm brewing, so much so that today's archery events, where the Indians were starting their individual events, have got postponed to tomorrow. And wind, as we know, is a big factor in golf also. So that's going to make it very, very challenging for the golfers. But Aditi Ashok in the women's side also in good form. She did very well. She was playing the US tour for the last 4 months. So she comes in good form also. Udyan Mane did very well to qualify. He actually made it luckily because of Ram dropping out. So it's a last minute inclusion into the Olympics, but I'm sure he'll make the most of it.
Indeed. So let's watch out for our club shooters as they will come on to their greens, and hopefully more greens than roughs for our shooters. And thank you for those bits of information. Also, there is a bit more from the archers that is expected. And like the shooters at this Olympics, not things not going very well for them. Will we see something different in the individual event from our world number one?
It's a big mystery, and you know, I'm unable to crack this one, Mihir, because very, very optimistic. Just before the games, we saw both Deepika and her husband Atanu winning gold medals. In fact, we won 3 gold medals at the World Championships in Paris.
But wait, but the Koreans weren't there.
The Koreans weren't there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a good point. But despite that, even with the Koreans there, one would have expected at least to be in the medals, but not to finish 8th
Yes.
or 10th,
Yeah, that's-
which is now the case. And so it comes down to nerves. Deepika, remember, is still ranked number 1 in the world despite the Koreans. And the individual events start off tomorrow. So I'm still optimistic. The key thing is can she hold her nerve? Because this is literally the 3rd time in a row that she has so much expectation on her shoulders,
Yeah.
and she's failed to deliver.
Yeah. And speaking about another woman who has a lot of expectations on her shoulders and another upcoming sport, women's hockey. 2 losses so far. I think we still need to be in the top 4 to qualify. But looking ahead at the matches and even from the learnings from these losses to very good teams, by the way,
Yes.
what is your prospect for the Indian Eves?
They've been playing well. Again, I think they were in the last match they were unlucky. To miss that penalty stroke really was a cardinal sin that could have changed that game. And then of course, you know, they once hit that crossbar, the goal post, and so a combination of bad luck, but overall shaping well. Tomorrow is a must-win game for the Indian Eves against Great Britain, because otherwise, as Mihir said, we stand chances of finishing not in the top 4 in the group. So to hopefully we will turn that around, Mihir, and put it against Great Britain.
We will. Great Britain right now, again, a formidable side. We haven't seen the best of their athletes yet. Remember, there's a lot of great cyclists to come out of Great Britain, a lot of track athletes. In fact, this is a team that will I think will impress. They're in the top 5 in the tables, but a lot more of their athletes to come. Speaking of the table, as we end day 4, Japan is at the top. Once again, Japan is at the top. They don't have the highest number of medals. In fact, they have 6 medals less than the United States, but they have the most goals, 10. In number 2 place is United States. Number 3, as we can expect, is China. The ROC contingent is in the 4th place. Great Britain and Australia round this top group up, and India has slipped down to 39.
I must add, now that you're talking about the medals, of a country called Bermuda with 64,000 population, got a gold medal yesterday.
They have.
And 64,000, it's mind-boggling. That's probably New Delhi railway station on a off-peak hour.
Indeed.
But that's amazing. I think I wish India could have such pleasant surprises once in a while.
No, so on that note, yeah, there is a concern that given our population, why the more medals not tally up. I think it's a complicated question. There's a lot of issues involved, but I think we can take solace in the fact that our Olympic contingent keeps growing. And let's try and end on a positive note here, because Gaurav, you feel that 3 more medals are surely in the future. You talked about even a 4th medal that might come in, and just walk us through very quickly where those could come. And I would think one of them would be PV Sindhu.
Absolutely. I think PV Sindhu relishes in doing well in big occasions, and she puts the pressure beside her. More than that, she seems in very good form. So definitely, I'm optimistic of PV Sindhu making it to a medal this time as well. The other one, definitely from our boxers, our women boxers, as we said, hopefully at least 2 medals there. Mary Kom as well as Bargoen. And then not to forget wrestlers. And certainly within the wrestlers, sure shot almost from Vinesh Phogat.
Yeah.
So that makes it 4. And then we were talking about our hockey
team.
Men's hockey.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. We've got 5 more medals.
Yeah, and let's we may not expect it, but I think it won't be surprising to come up with more medals in wrestling too. But Vinesh Phogat, really an athlete to watch out for. In sublime form, one of the best in the world. Again, there's a lot of weight on her shoulders, so let's hope her fate is a little different from the shooters and the archers. So much sport, so much action going on. I hope most importantly that you're enjoying these events. You know, this is a time for you to really take a step back and reach out from sports like cricket. Not that there's anything wrong with cricket, and there is a lot going on right now, but really appreciate athletes across these sports and appreciate what comes from so many countries. I want to thank Doordarshan for bringing an old acquaintance, not old in years, I should say, very young at heart. But Gaurav, pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for your insights.
Always a pleasure.
Great, and I wish you a good evening.